What is about to follow is an enormous exposition dump, and I already recorded it audio-wise, and then realized I hadn't hit the record button for video, so I have to do all of the exposition recording again, yay! Anyway... yeah, it's certainly quite the commotion. I mean, an entire kingdom is being revived. A long-lost king and queen have been found and rescued, and a long-lost princess is back. So yes, it's about now that some of the crazy relations in this game come to light. Claris is, I believe, she is the... I have the character relationships chart up already. Claris would be the, okay, yes. So she is, Robert, married to Robert. Robert is the sibling of Maria. So she isn't exactly, like, related to them by blood, but she's related to them by marriage, at least. It is just kind of interesting because you don't often see people in fiction who've been in prison for this long of a time. Like, 15 years is a lot, and a lot of the world has changed while they were gone. Where is Zachariah, by the way? They actually mention Zachariah a lot at this point in the game, but I don't think he ever appears, physically, which is weird because he's a forced recruitment. So there's no reason why he couldn't show up in these scenes if he's alive. It's just pretty weird, like, again, as I was mentioning, Zachariah kind of disappears from the plot after his recruitments, in a game that generally doesn't do that to people. And again, you'd think of all people that they wouldn't make him disappear because he's really significant. He kind of saved Catherine's life when she was a baby, but no, he just kind of drops off. Now, while this is all well and good, if public word gets out that Maria is alive, Gwen Chaos will find out, and then you'll suffer very serious attacks. So you might want to be careful, like, you know, the fact that the king and queen are back, that's fine. Don't mention that the princess has come back. So yes, Robert, her husband is Lionheart's brother, I think. And, actually, hang on a minute. So Lionheart is... yes, he's Robert's brother, which makes him Claris's brother-in-law. And he is also... yes, he's also Maria's brother, which makes him, King Dagnall's brother-in-law. And Holmes and Runan have reunited at last. It's felt like so long. I wonder, like, canonically how much time has passed. Has it been like a few months, maybe? I feel like it's probably been at least a month. Maybe longer, since Runan's gone on an entire campaign against the Empire. Busy doing things in the area, like reviving lost kingdoms. A bunch of new weapons, like this arbalest that I went through a lot of trouble to steal. It is kind of interesting how gameplay-wise they expect you to have Holmes' party get a lot of weapons and transfer them to Runan's. Because Runan has less availability to buy stuff. It's kind of an interesting gameplay idea. I mean, you know how Holmes is. He's tsundere. Whenever he says something that isn't "I care about your well-being," he actually means "I care about your well-being." Now here's somebody that I don't think we've seen before, who is Zeeg's sister that we didn't know about. However, you might have seen her before if you somehow got Zeeg killed earlier in the game. Zeeg is not one of those characters like Shigen who has a mysterious protector who will not allow them to die for plot reasons. Keep watch on the Shaman of Water. Was Zeeg a spy all along? But he was doing such a good job helping us out in battle. Meet every one of our warriors. Well, I dread to think what would happen if they got him on their side. For once, Eugen's fears of someone deserting have actually been founded. And weirdly enough, Zeeg is one of the few people Eugen wasn't suspecting of being a traitor or deserter. So yes, Zeeg is gone. From a gameplay standpoint, the good thing is that he was nice enough to leave all of his items in our convoy before he left, so you don't need to worry about losing anything that he was carrying, or any items that he picked up in villages or anything like that. All of them go back in the convoy. But as for Zeeg himself, we won't be able to rely on his amazing strength from now on. At least as far as we know. Like, I don't know if he was always on their side, or if maybe we rubbed off on him, or if he's a double agent and he wants to maybe help us from inside the cult. I don't know, but at the very least, Zeeg is no longer with us from a gameplay standpoint. Well, I suppose that'll be a priority going forward. I think you may get some slightly different dialogue there if Kate and Zeeg were on Holmes' route, because that actually is possible. Zeeg does decently there, and I know speedruns that put him on that route, but I prefer him on Runan's. But speaking of conversations that I've never actually seen before, because I usually put people on other routes, yeah, this dialogue here, and what you're about to see, only happens if you had Sasha on Holmes' route for the first split, and I've never actually done that before, so this is my first time seeing this dialogue, or at least it would have been if I hadn't forgotten to hit the record button earlier. Sorry, still kind of salty about that. So this conversation is really interesting because some of it is the same as her conversation with him on Chapter 19, if you put her on Runan's route, but some of it is new, and some of it is very interesting and important. So this plays out about the same way. I I suppose that's how you sum him up. It looks like Raphael knows something that Sasha doesn't. Hold on. No, yes. Yes, get her caught up in the fight against the Empire. She is amazing and we could use her. In fact, she's going on Runan's route from now on. She's going straight to the front lines. No more skulking around fighting monsters on Holmes' route. Her strength is much better served there. Yeah, I think the part about Mother giving her blessing only happens if you put her on Holmes' route, because she wouldn't have seen her mother again if you put her on Runan's. And these lines are about the same as their conversation in Chapter 19, if you got that one. And from now on, I don't think I'll be separating these two. Raphael and Sasha will both be in Runan's party. Meanwhile, we're about to get an enormous sequence of exposition conversations involving Rishel that is all locked behind an optional recruit, him. It's kind of amazing just how important this guy is and the fact that you can very easily miss him. I kind of wonder if this information is like meant to be a reward for recruiting him, but at the same time, it's, well, you'll see. Yeah, I kind of dread this part. So, we're about to get a little bit more information about why this guy needed to be nursed back to health. That's why he was found face down in a river. Being taken away somewhere by the current reminds me a lot of Byleth after the time skip. I don't know if Patricia is really important to anything, or if that was just a name that they just decided to drop at this point. At least he didn't suffer from typical story amnesia. Yeah, the good news is that he gets to reunite with his sister a lot sooner than he expected. And here she is. Someone actually pointed out that Muriel and Rishel have red and green hair, so they might as well be red and green knights, but mages. Good news, those two are actually blood siblings, so don't need to worry about any incest there. Because generally, these games will never go that far. Although Fire Emblem 4 definitely did. Kind of. Yeah, we need to keep calling her Enter, and otherwise Runan might find out who she really is, and then put two and two together and realise what she did to Nolzaria. And that would be awkward for everyone. So, here... Oh boy, this conversation, yeah. I am not a big fan of this conversation at all. It does reveal some important information. Martel, by the way, is Rishel's cousin, as is Maeve/Enter. Yeah, they're both related to him, so Rishel is descended from Myos, the Sage of Water. His son is Nareth, and Nareth had Rishel and Muriel. Nareth is married to Rosa, and Rosa is the sister of Clarice, and also Lisa, so Sasha is also their cousin, and Nareth is the brother of Enter's mother. So yes, if in doubt, assume that everybody is everyone's cousin, because they basically all are. Also, the thing is that Rishel is implied to have a crush on Enter, and yeah, cousins. I said this game wouldn't go far as full-blood sibling incest, but it would not be a Saga game without some form of cousin incest somewhere. So, this conversation. Remember this, grandfather, the Sage of Fire, named Rishel his successor. That's the point that we're discussing now. Of course it was an easy decision. I mean, Rishel's like the best fire mage out there. I don't mean even in this game. He could probably give a lot of fire mages from Fire Emblem a run for their money. Though whenever I see Andre, I always just think of the boss from Fire Emblem 4. And Renee! Okay, so, back to relationship chart, because this is interesting. So, Renee is the daughter of Andre. Andre is the brother of Rosa and Lisa. So, yeah, even more people are related to this group. So we're talking about Lion's success with mages, and then talking about how Meriel is taking after light magic. Now, we're on the topic of why Meriel is succeeding the Light Sage, their other grandfather, Sage Myos, who is actually the Sage of Water, and he's the one who, his line descends down to, Enter. And now we're going to go into the subject of Uncle Nareth. We already learned before that Nareth was kind of corrupt, and now we're about to learn exactly why. This is very, very important information, but I wish they delivered it a little bit better than this, because with this whole conversation. So yes, King Badum is, Maeve's father. He was the former king of Reeve. And yeah, they didn't want a potential dragon rampage, so they didn't care about a little girl's feelings, and they kept her imprisoned in a shrine for possibly her entire life. So this is a decent moment, but it does get a little bit bogged down by yet more exposition, because Martell in this scene, she mostly serves that whole Metal Gear role of just asking questions that she really has no practical reason to, just to force more exposition out of Rishel. Like, did we really need to know why these two lived slightly away from the shrine and thus didn't realize that Enter was imprisoned? It's just, and I know that when people really talk, they do go on a lot of tangents like this, and often just meander around and go to different topics, but it's still, also a lot of this dialogue here is very tell, don't show as well. While I'm not normally the kind of person to be saying, oh, show, don't tell is always inherently better, like, sometimes you have to tell things, but like, this whole thing, like, what happened to Nareth? Put poison in his mutton. But like, anyway, this whole thing is just like, oh, why did this happen? What happened to this? Oh, this happened in my past. I felt this way. I saw her looking like this. This made me feel sad. My father was a bad person. It's just, again, very tell don't show, and it's very excessively that way. And now we're going into a completely different topic of the Zoan persecution, which is another very important aspect of this story. By the way, Heretic Hunter is funny to me because it's the title of a character in the Trail series, but they really didn't need to go into this now, because now we got the Runeblade of Zoa, who is Shigen's adoptive father, and that's a completely different subplot. And again, Martell is just asking more questions. Like, what did you feel at this point? What happened then? What's this? Who is this? It's just... like, again, I really, really enjoy this game overall, but, like, I haven't really realized it this much until I started doing a recorded playthrough of it, and actually showing it to, you know, people and getting them to comment on it in the comments section, but... maybe it actually helped that my first playthrough was with a translation patch that was bad and garbled all of this exposition into incomprehensibility, because I didn't need to worry about much of it. Like the story, I could just enjoy the gameplay. And it's funny, like, I like the story of this game overall, I just feel like there is way too much world building where it doesn't really need to happen. It's just the thing, like, As I've said before, Fates had the problem of too little world building, but this game's issue is just having too much world building. So now the topic at hand is, do we tell Meriel that our father was an awful person? They even lampshade it too. It's just kind of, I mean, I'm so sorry to be negative here. It's just like, a lot of this, if they had spread it out, because now they're back to that original topic. Oh, succeeding your grandfather as the Fire Sage. That was the point that they originally talked about, and now they're getting to, oh, why couldn't your sisters do it? It's just this conversation meanders all over the place. Maybe this is why speedrunners don't recruit Rishel. Because they get to skip this conversation. This is prime gameplay and story segregation right here. Because Levin swords. They're all actually amazing at magic. It's, yeah, just why they probably should have had a separate resistance stat and not made Pegasus Knights have really high magic. It is kind of cool to know that Sasha is also Rochelle's cousin via complicated family trees. And so, after that enormous amount of exposition, we've concluded that you're the only one of us who could possibly succeed Grandfather. Why we didn't open with that, I don't know. I mean, there is some nice little banter here too. See, this is more of what I want to see. Just, you know, cousins interacting with each other like this and just joking around. This kind of reminds me, like, of a problem that some people have with the last Airbender movie. The fact that, like, characterization is often sacrificed just to have characters just say, this happened. It is a shame that your son was burned alive in the siege of Ba Sing Se. I'm absolutely not saying that this game's story is as bad as that movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still, like, it gets really, really heavy-handed. Meanwhile, we do get some pretty fun dialogue here between drunk Holmes and drunk Eugen. Yeah, Holmes is the kind of person who, the way he acts normally, it's hard to tell if he's drunk or not. Unfortunately, we don't get to see the ultimate showdown of Ultimate Destiny, of Sass versus Sass. Okay, yeah, this takes the edge off some of that exposition earlier. This is great. Eugen is really good. Eugen is actually pretty great. Like, it's just, he's kind of a fun character overall, because it's kind of rare that the Lord's tactician is kind of depicted as this, like, I don't know, not exactly the paragon of competence. He's sort of more of a comic relief character. Oh, I'm sure he would have said those things anyway. Oh yes, you're that one who turned into a dragon. And some of those zombies that we had to fight for a billion turns because we were getting chests. Yeah, whether she goes by Katri or Maria at this point, she'll have to make that decision. And so, yes, we're about to have another route split. Which Eugen thankfully reminds us of. In fact, we have different music this time. So, once we move out here, we will officially be splitting the parties. So, manage items. You can press you can go here, and then I believe, yeah, you can, I think, if you press the select button, you can swap items between the two convoys. Yep, you can press the select button to change parties. All that stuff from the other route split. We can also trade gold around. Oh, there is a secret shop in Runan's Chapter 26, but only Chapter 26A, that sells silver swords, arbalests, and chukonus, which is pretty amazing, although I'm not going to be going to Chapter 26A in my canonical run. Yes, Chapter 26A. I'll talk about that in a moment. But first, this route split is going to last until Chapter 30, well, right after Chapter 30. It's shorter than the previous one, but Runan has 3 chapters, although Chapters 24 to 26. However, Chapter 26, there are 2 versions of it. Holmes has Chapters 27 to 30. And as with the last route split, I'll first talk about the mutually exclusive events. And there's only one character with a mutually exclusive event this time, Julia. On Runan's route, Julia can defeat the boss of Chapter 26 to get you an extremely powerful sword. And as much as I highly recommend this event, it can also be done with Vega, although there'll be different dialogue. Something to also note is that there are 2 versions of Chapter 26, but they both have the same boss, and this event plays out the same way in both versions. Julia doesn't really need to be trained to pull this off either. The boss is very weak, and they can easily be weakened with Raquel. But on Holmes' route, Julia will learn Astra after Chapter 30, and around that time she'll also have an optional event with Shigen that increases their mutual support. Doing this event though causes them to hook up in the epilogue, which, yeah, only do it if you're into that kind of thing. Personally, I recommend her on Holmes' route, but if she's trained, it can be very satisfying to have her fight the boss of Chapter 26. And now the events on Runan's routes. If you've been following the Latina event, for the final part you'll need to switch Christ back over to Runan's route. He needs to defeat a mini-boss named Mark on that map in order to recruit Latina. If you've taken the event this far, you'll actually get absolutely nothing out of it unless you complete this final step. Otherwise, there'll be a replacement character who anyone can recruit that you'll get instead of Latina. But again, if you've taken the Latina event as far as I have, it is too late to get the replacement character. Kreis is also able to recruit a character in Chapter 26, but only the A version of that map. Speaking of which, Arcus has events surrounding Chapter 26. He can also recruit the same character by visiting a village in Chapter 26A, but in Chapter 26B, things get a lot more interesting. He technically makes things harder for you if he's on Runan's route and you go to Chapter 26B. But the events he triggers do result in a net positive. He gets an increased support with the Chapter 26 recruit, which he would miss out on if you went Chapter 26A. All of this will make sense once we get there. Vega, as I said in the mutually exclusive section, can defeat the boss of Chapter 26 to get you an extremely powerful sword. I highly recommend this, especially as Vega will likely be trained if you went with the events for him on Holmes' route. Chapter 26 is quite a packed one because it also has the event with Luca and Raquel that allows her to be able to kill human enemies. And something I want to mention is I was actually wrong about this event earlier. You do not need to trigger the Chapter 4 event with Luca in order to unlock this, so it's actually okay to pick Luca at Welt the second time. That still doesn't make picking him really worth it, but it's something to consider. And finally, if you have both Meriel and Rishel on Runan's route, he will give her the Aura Rain, which is her second personal tome, immediately after the route split. It also increases their support slightly. Aura Rain is a very good tome, so I would definitely recommend this. In addition, Rishel is massively helpful on Runan's route, especially in Chapter 25, which I'll just say is a desert map that involves fighting some very strong mini-bosses in desert terrain. A strong mage really helps there. And the events on Holmes' route. On Holmes' route, there will be two mutually exclusive events when you pass by Okus Village. It'll be an event between either Xeno and Uni, or Lyria and Atrom, depending on your dialogue choice, and who's present, obviously. These events raise the supports between these two characters, and result in changes to the epilogue. Overall, the Xeno and Uni event is a lot more well-liked. Not only does it raise their support higher than the Atrom and Lyria one, it also reveals some interesting backstory in the epilogue. But I'll be putting both sets of characters on Holmes' route just so I can show both. Atrom should be on Holmes' route anyway though, because he has to recruit someone in Chapter 29. He also has some story events after that chapter that give him a small one-sided support with Holmes. If Lionheart is in Holmes' route, he'll host a big party when you pass through Blood. This party leads to a lot of fun events, and some that even increase supports. If Krishna is on Holmes' route, she'll trigger an interesting sequence of events after Chapter 29. These ones are independent of the duel event with Shigen and Vega earlier. And like the Arcus one for Runan's route, they technically set you back a little bit, but they can be fun for story purposes, and they can potentially end up unlocking more supports between her and Shigen. I say potentially because that part of the event is optional. Also, this is the event that you can glitch in a very hilarious way that I plan on showing. After Chapter 30, Holmes' party will end up passing over the same desert that Runan does. If you have Uni and Bud in Holmes' group, Uni will find a Canto Scroll and Bud will find a Wyvern Flute. This is completely scripted, you don't actually go to the map. While these items are rare, there aren't many people at this point that you want to use the Canto Scroll on, and the Wyvern Flute kind of makes Pegasus Knights worse and can't be sold. Runan's route actually could use some extra thieves too, so while Uni needs to be on Holmes' route for the events, I recommend putting Bud on Runan's despite the Wyvern Flute. Finally, early into Holmes' portion of this act, there's a special event with Plum that she needs to be a dancer and have Land's mirror in order to see. If I was purely concerned with gameplay, I would put her on Runan's route all the way, especially since her and Aura Rain is a hilarious combo. However, this event is very important and I really want to show it, so no dancer for the slightly harder portion of the game. So I'm just going to move around the characters that I need to move around for events. So with that done, in terms of other characters, I am going to be keeping Raphael on Runan's route. He's going to be our replacement for Zeke, essentially. Now, Tom, I think there are arenas on Holmes' route. I might actually want to put him over on Holmes. That ballista may be useful in a few chapters as well. Now, I did promise that I would send Bilford and Leonie over to Holmes' army just to train them and see if they get movement, see if they gain movements. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to separate Leonie and Mintz because I like Mintz a lot more on Runan's route. Still hasn't used that Kanto scroll yet, unfortunately. Here's the really weird thing. As funny as Marhen's banter with Holmes is, Runan will be fighting a lot more humans with a lot better weapons, so I actually think he does better on Runan's route. I've never done this in any of my playthroughs, but I'm going to try, and he combos quite well with Raquel too, who, by the way, should probably be on Runan's path. And Sasha is going to go back to Runan's route, but I'm going to keep Martel on Holmes, just so that Holmes has a flyer. Because flyers are pretty useful. Holmes has a few boat chapters, by the way, but Runan has a desert chapter. Speaking of Runan's desert chapter... So, yeah, Runan's desert chapter. Thieves are very helpful to find the desert treasures. And Bud, even though she can find a wyvern flute if she's on Holmes' route, Runan kind of needs thieves, especially if you plan on going to chapter 26B. So, I think I'm going to put Bud over on Runan's route. And yeah, I'm going to keep Mel on Holmes' route, because that Ensorcel Staff will be useful for somebody that he'll recruit very early. Something that I should also mention though, you want to make sure that Holmes' party has enough healers. He's going to have Plum, even though dancing is probably better for Runan's route. I should mention that a weapon that Meriel is about to get combos very, very well with having a dancer. But I'm going to keep Plum on Holmes' route. So, Katri is actually going to be leaving the party after we part ways. That's a bit of a spoiler for the next leg of the story, but that's what will be happening. So, that's why having some more people who can use Physic is really helpful. With that, I think I'm fine in terms of these team placements. I like to have San, as I've said before, act as Holmes' party's Naren. I mean, Marouge can really go to either party at this point. I'm not really using him, but I'm just going to keep him on Holmes just because. I think I'll send one fresh Levin Sword and two almost broken Levin Swords over to Holmes' route for Martel. Oh, Dolharkin. Yeah, I actually think I'm going to send that to Runan's route in case I need to tank with Raphael. Holmes could use an extra physics staff or two. And after all that effort to get the Arbalest and the Chukonu, they're going to Runan's party for Raphael. In fact, I probably didn't even need to buy that silver bow earlier. I'm kind of regretting that purchase now. Maybe that can go to Holmes, actually. Because Chukonu will take out most things, and the reason why I'm actually giving the Arbalest to Runan's party is because Holmes will be getting another one in Chapter 27. Oh, the Salia Codex. That's the real question here. Whose party gets that? I was thinking Holmes, maybe? Oh, it would be kind of fun to give that to Bilford as well. I think I'll keep that on Holmes for now. Oh, okay, yes. Sylphid. I need to give a Sylphid to Runan's party. But I also want to make sure that I keep one for Holmes' party. Because if you thought Rishel was hilarious before, well, he has Vantage and Sylphid, so... yeah, Vantage with a tome that prevents counterattacks. You do the math on that one. I should probably keep that one for Martel. Oh, we can also access the armory here before we leave. It should be Runan's last chance to access this too, so if you want more silver bows, you can get them here. Heal staves are a decent idea as well. I think I'm actually running low on those, so I might want to grab a few of them. Might as well sell a few crappy slim swords. If it gives me enough money to get another leather shield, which I might need later. And I'm keeping both an actual save and a save state here in case I messed anything up, but that should be everything. So once we move off, we will get into Act 3 of the game. See you all then.